Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. All right, I have 3:01 on my clock here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to Spring into Action with Canvas. We're very excited that you are here to join us, and we're hoping that we have great information to offer today and help you ease into the semester with better terms and just more success for you and your students. Without further ado, I'm Reem Hussein. I'll be presenting today. I'm an educational consultant with the Center of Teaching Excellence. Along with me, joining me in this training will be my colleague CJ Shields, who is also a senior educational consultant in the Center of Teaching Excellence. He will be moderating the chat, so if you have any questions throughout, feel free to drop those in the chat and he'll help answer those questions. And if you feel like those questions can wait till the end, we are also going to have a Q&A to the very end and address those questions. CJ will also be sharing some resources, amazing resources in the chat. So feel free to, or make sure you are keeping an eye out for all those great stuff. Along with us, we also are joined by Mr. Randy Brooks, who is an associate professor of practice from the College of Engineering. He is going to walk us through an exemplar class or course that he has designed and just show us all the great practices and all the good tips and tricks to ensure we have a successful course. Mr. Brooks has 23 years in telecom network planning and operations with MCI, Vartic, and Charter. I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly. He also moved from frontline analyst to director, to include project management and training and development delivery. So thank you so much, Mr. Brooks, for being here, and we're very excited to see what you have to offer in a minute. All right, to start off, just a big, broad overview of our objectives today. We're going to look into the technical skills that Canvas has to offer, as well as the pedagogical skills. Those tend to blur out a little bit with Canvas because there's just a lot of components to it. So we're hoping today to have those more defined, as well as getting you as much Canvas knowledge to help you prepare for a successful semester. Our main objectives include touring an exemplar Canvas course, in which case Randy Brooks will be looking into his course and showing us what he has. We're going to establish an accurate Canvas gradebook, which is a major stressor that students have since day one, as well as faculty members. So we're just going to lift off this stress and go over those major 7 steps to set up at the beginning of the year, so you don't have to worry much about it the entire year. We're going to practice creating content in modules, how that looks like, new content as well as existing content. We're going to evaluate student work using the Canvas Speed Grader, which is a very cool tool that Canvas has that allows you to fastly grade. We're going to look into that, and developing an understanding for the student experience by being the student, being in their shoes, and seeing whatever we do on Canvas looks like when we are the students viewing the course. So a lot of great things ahead. We are ready to get started. As far as resources go, you will be receiving a slide deck of the slide that we have, and CJ will be sharing that in the chat. You also will get a resource guide with all the great links that would help facilitate and support everything we talk about today and much more, and a recording of this session, just in case you'd like to view and relive this all again. You will have that within 1 week, just to make sure we look at it and refine it and all that good stuff. Our sections will include main 5 sections we'll jump through. We have the Canvas tour that we'll start off with, exploring the 2 courses, as well as going to the gradebook setup, making sure your gradebook is set up within these 7 steps. We will also go through the module creation, just exploring how that looks like and how to build a successful module. We will then transition to student evaluation, how to evaluate students' work through the Speed Grader, and learning the importance of timely feedback and how that's going to make your life so much easier. And finally, the student view, where we're going to act like students because there's a button that lets us do that and see all the great things and just give ourselves that kind of feedback and troubleshoot as needed. So the first thing we are going to look into is the touring of a course. So course explanation, exploration, and looking at how those successful elements come into play and how do students think through all that information that's in there. Why is it important that we're doing this? Why are we exploring various course designs? Can we just not look at one template? Well, the reason we are doing it, it's because we believe that when you do see multiple forms of how professors are doing different things differently, you get to see the different forms of engagement out there. So if you're doing something one way, well, you get to learn about other ways that maybe you didn't think of. We also would think that this help us with flexibility, knowing how these practices will keep us engaged with the students and vice versa. And then finally, accessibility. We love to see what other instructors have to offer, just to see what methods have they been doing that allows us to maintain the accessibility, make sure all the students are able to access the information. So without further ado, I will be handing it out to Mr. Randy Brooks to go over his course, and we want everybody to kind of look at the homepage clarity in his course. I want you to notice the ease of finding resources that Mr. Brooks has in his course, as well as the clarity of communication that he has to offer. So without further ado, the stage is yours, Mr. Brooks.
Hey, Aggies. Good to have you here. Can I get a screen share opening? There we go. So appreciate y'all joining today. I just want to kind of take you through a little bit how I've worked with Canvas. I've been teaching with A&M for 6 years. Prior to that, I had 8 years I was teaching at a high school doing pre-cal and engineering there. First couple of years, we were using the Blackboard LMS, and then we've moved to Canvas. Through that transition, was able to really kind of start using some of the resources here. I have had a very focused team on the Canvas deployment. So when you get your initial shell, actually a lot of resources pre-built into that, which is really kind of nice to have. So you can just kind of build on top of that. The screen here I have is what they call the dashboard. So this is where all the classes will show up that I teach. You're looking at what I did last fall. And I'm going to take you through my 217 course. So you can kind of customize that first view a little bit here. And then want to build a home page. And it's a mix. You don't want it to be too overwhelming for the students, but want to be able to have places for them to go. One of the challenges in our courses is making sure I could manage the mail from the students, because I've got to teach students really kind of how to do email. This is for third semester students in engineering. So I have this front element up that they put this particular element in to the subject line so that I have it direct in my mail sent to a special folder. So I'll make sure I get attention to those and they don't get lost with some of the other mail. So a good thing to kind of teach them on that, to kind of understand the email piece. In my intro to them, have this little view, just kind of show how I came to here. So I keep that in here so that helps them kind of keep a reminder of who I am, kind of what my background is, what comes into play with that. This bottom element is some of the base resources in place. What I've replaced here, there's a thing called office hours, and always have some discussion with students about what office hours are. So I've replaced it with Q&A, because it seemed to be a little more receptive to them. They had a little more understanding what Q&A was. And let me go ahead and jump to that one. If they select that one, kind of gives them an idea of when I can meet with them. I had some TAs working with my class, so I gave them a list of the TAs. And I gave them my teaching schedule. So I have my office hours, but here's when I'm in class. You can pick sometimes when I'm not in class, also try to catch me too. So just to kind of give them a little view on that. So that's about what I give on that first page, just to give them a starting resource. I use announcements pretty heavily. The nice thing on announcements is if you want to put these into just a particular group, because I had, so in 217, I think I had like 16 sections here. If I wanted to send a note just to a couple of sections, I could, just an announcement just for those 2 sections, which is nice. And I could do written notes. You can even record announcements to send out to that. So I found students pretty receptive on this one. I had pretty good attention tied to what's going on with the announcements. Oh, and what I didn't talk about on this first one, A&M has it set up so if you're teaching several sections and they're pretty much doing the same work, you can load those all into one shell, so you manage them with one shell and don't need to load resources in multiple. So makes that kind of clean to work with. I handled all of my group in one particular shell here. Where most of my work happened was in modules, because we have the school pretty well built on this weekly schedule going through, and I found students were pretty clean into how they handle their life on a weekly basis, what has to happen. So I would build our modules this way. In my course, I had just a 1 hour lecture with them each week. So I had several of those to go through, and I would have this pretty common structure to kind of give them an idea of what we're covering this week, things that they need to do. The second one, I'd put information in here. I might have an intro video. I would probably have the slide deck that would go through in class, some intro to any activities we might do. One thing I do like to do the first week is this thing called Who We Are. So this uses the discussion board. And I asked them to give me a picture of them. Tell me, in this point, they're still pursuing majors, so what it is that they are pursuing, things that they think are fun, and tell me about where they're going. And this is available for all. And I like to do this at the very beginning and push everybody to get something in here. So if I work in teams or in groups and they need to contact somebody, they can go to this location and go find out about them, find out what they look like, maybe do some connections there. So a pretty good community place here that I built for that particular run. And you can see that shows up in discussion boards, but I can build it as an assignment for them to go through and do. And then I will just do kind of a knowledge check. Usually this is kind of a quiz that you can build in Canvas, and really just kind of get feedback from them, and also to kind of check maybe if I want them to go through something for this particular week. And this one is usually kind of the syllabus search to identify, here's some things I want you to look for in the syllabus, and I'll pose questions about it, and maybe have multiple choice answers. It's kind of a baseline intelligent tutoring system where I have questions in place, multiple choice answers, and I can give them feedback on each of those multiple choice answers. So if they're not selecting the correct one I'm looking for, give them some hints and direction on how to chase that. Nice thing about that is one of the self-grading elements that actually does get them some personalized feedback kind of tied to that. And then each week I like to kind of do a wrap up and say here where we're headed. This is a good area for saying, here's what we just learned. Here's how it connects to the next thing we're moving to. And then all of these are published now because I used this last semester, but I won't unpublish these until we come to that week, right? If there's some pre-work need to do, I may go and open it up early, but usually I won't open it until over the weekend. So when the students go into this area, they will only see this week one, right? I've got the others stacked in here for the rest of the semester, and I could build those, but that's all they need to focus on. So when the next week opens, is if you like the S&C pretty basic format, we're kind of looking to give them some activity to do, build a lot of the grade their own quizzes, because I had quite a few students to handle here, and that makes sure that gets everybody some touch point in there. So modules where I'll really try to drive them to, that's where I'll have a lot of the students set and work. Everything that I build in here will also show up in assignments. And some students work better off of this one, and that's fine. I don't require them to be in one place or the other, but it just kind of puts all the assignments in place. I kind of listen to what's happening with that. Another nice element here is people. So I try to do some teamwork with the groups. So here I have all of my students will be listed, and I can identify, want them to self-assign in groups. So I could go build these groups in, and then during class, whoever's in class had them go and sign up for those particular groups. And now that's graded as a group. So one person from the group will turn in the assignment, but it's turned in for all of them. I could grade it one time, and it grades for those 4 members. So as I'm doing group work, those are kind of nice to build in place. So that's a good setup. A couple of things I wanted to flag. Try to have students comfortable on that first day of class, so it's not the general first day of class thing you often hit. So I try to build the welcoming element into here. Timing wise and size wise, you may be able to go for your classes, go into Howdy and pull their emails and actually send them a pre-course survey. to get some information about your students, right? If you want to find out, if you have first gens, have particular areas that they like to pursue, some unique things about them. So something that you can use throughout the semester. And we have a tool called Qualtrics that can help pretty easily with that to give you some output you can use for the semester, kind of weave into your classes, right? If you find out that you have several students maybe interested in what's going on with the space program, you can pull things in that are going on with the space program into some of your lessons and maybe help design some of that. Final thing I wanted to share before I take questions is the nice thing about this one is I've got this particular class built. Now that I'm moving into the spring, I can actually output this design and everything that's in it and pull it into my spring 24 plan. And now I've got all of that information there, and I just need to address the updates that have to happen, right? Because I don't necessarily do the same class design every semester. I'll update particular elements, but the ones that I don't need changing, I can just bring them in and don't need to touch those. So I'll bring this as my spring shell. I'll go out and delete the discussions and announcements that were there, and then I'm good to go with building my elements for spring. Let me check through. Okay, I think that's key things I wanted to cover. Do we have some questions that need to dig into?
Yes, Randy, there is a question in the chat. Can you show what you do for your week one knowledge check?
Oh, okay. So here we concurrent with my lecture where they have a lab that they go into. So here I'm going through and giving them some direction on some tools in that lab and seeing how well they captured that, right? So just have some particular questions in place. Let's see if I could break one of these out. No. Oh yeah, it's not gonna let me touch it because it's out. But what I can do is when I'm constructing this, I'm able to go in and on each of these questions for the ones that aren't correct, put in some hints and some guidance, and then I let them just continue to retake the quizzes. So it's a retake the quiz till you get everything right on it. All right, so I just had a few things that I've touched on throughout the semester. What I will often do is also kind of give them an intro. Rather than hitting it completely in class, I will go through the syllabus in a video and post that video because they will, day one of school, they will open Canvas for the student availability. Now this semester, I don't have a class till Thursday, so I could put all that information in for them to be able to see starting on Tuesday. And now they know quite a bit about the class before they even walk in. So it's almost not like a day one class because they've been able to dig through a lot of that material. All right, other things?
Nothing else in the chat as of now, but feel free to post something in the chat or ask a question if you would like.
Okay, I'll stop the share there. So I'll stick on and be available if some questions come up. If you need me to jump into something.
Thank you so very much for that great presentation and the great exemplar course. I love that your homepage had information like your email organization info on the page that I never saw that. So that's actually really nice that you get to specify for students how you want them to address you. And then based on that, it helps you organize on your end how you receive those emails.
Yeah, because we, they don't really have that great of a concept about how important email is. They haven't necessarily worked with it that much, and we try to teach them email is currently how the adult world works. Right. So you got to figure out how this process is, and if you follow these rules, you get better attention because it puts it in a specific folder that I keep clean in my mail, as opposed to all the other things that come in sitting in the inbox. So kind of one of those early things to go through to say, so here's one way you can do some managing of your email.
Extremely clever. I love that. I mean, that's the first time I've seen it, and I really do like that. I also like that you put a slide about yourself. I think it makes your course so personable and relatable to students that to me is very crucial. And then your weekly review, like how you have your modules in order. that to me is a very key point, and I'm glad you hit on that, because we'll be looking at some of that things, but having it organized by week versus content makes it so much easier for students. Otherwise, it's so overwhelming for them to find things. And so that's beautiful what you have done there in the formatting you followed.
Yeah, I'd like to do the content flow. I feel like that may be a better teaching tool, but
Yeah.
because of their lives and everything in their lives is now managing through that week, I think it works management wise better for the students from that perspective. So that's kind of where I use that end of wrap up and looking ahead to do some of the content tie together to help them see here's why it's sequenced this way and here's what ties together.
I thought it was brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much, Randy Brooks, for that great exemplar. And we'll be definitely doing a lot of piggybacks back to the great stuff that you showed. Thank you. All right, we're going to hop back to our presentation. And with all the great things that we just saw, I would love to hear from you and just kind of what great things you have seen that you would like to implement in your class or something that you would like to explore further. You are welcome to either unmute your mic or just share it through chat and we'll read through those. Any good practices that you saw that you would like to implement from the example we just saw?
Hi there. I actually have a question about the discussion board. One of the courses that I'm managing is implementing a discussion board, and the course directors are wanting some of the faculty within the course to grade those discussion boards, but I've never dealt with them and I don't know what it looks like when my faculty are trying to grade them. Is that something that you might be able to show from another course or talk more about?
Yeah. Do we have time right now, CJ, to address this or towards the end?
If we can take a quick look right now and then dive just so we can see what the discussion looks like, and I think specifics, let's try to, depending on how long, handle as a individual consultation if you want. Callie, if we're happy to walk through setting those up. Randy, if you want to show one, that'd be great. And then Callie, if you want to dive into more specifics, we can give you lots of pointers on setting those up if that works for both of you.
Thank you so much.
So I had set this one up as a way you do grading, right? So it's in this form, right? Again, this particular direction. I would start with my own intro on it, and then students would come in and enter theirs. But when I do grading, and we'll talk about the speed grader, when I do grading, I can go from student to student and see just their particular entry. So there's a couple of ways that I've done that. This one allows you to do that directly as an assignment. My other one is I've also told them sometimes just put it in the discussion board that I could build just if we hit discussion and see what that looks like, I could just build one of these and have them do that entry. And then I can just go through and check their names as I go through, right? Depending on what that size is. This large of a class wasn't really practical to do that, but in smaller classes I've had 100 or 200 students, I could just go through the discussion board to see that one. But the output of what the students see is the same on it. They could still see everything that's available. But the speed grader option really helps you just grade it just like any other assignment, just like if you had a quizzes that you're going in and grading.
So if you were to go into the gradebook and go into speed grader and you went into that particular column for speed grader, it would show you each person's contribution to that discussion board within their speed grader.
Yes, it just comes down and just shows what their input was, which is nice.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a question, how many students do you have in your class, Randy? And I think you actually just addressed that as the question was typed. I think it looks like that one had 600 and some.
Yeah, so I taught a couple of engineering classes and I had 12 lectures and about 650 students through those. But I only had them 1 hour a week, so it wasn't a massive load. But I didn't get to know them great in class because I only have them an hour a week. So that's why the who are we is even more important to me because now I get a picture of them and I can go revisit those anytime that I want.
Perfect. Do we have any other remarks or Any ideas?
Nothing in the chat right now.
Fantastic, thank you. And just to add to all the great stuff that Randy had already addressed about the discussions, there is an option when you are creating your discussion to either have it graded or ungraded. And that would make the difference of whether it's going to be graded in the grade book or not. All right, we are going to transition to the grade book, which is a very important topic. We're going to look at how to create a successful grade book via the 7 steps that we have listed. The first one being determining the grading method, choosing a grading scheme, then we will create an assignment groups, and then set assignment group weights. Then we'll go to setting assignment group rules, setting late and missing policies, and finally setting gradebook posting policies. And that, when we make sure we have all those 7 steps applied to our gradebook, we ensure a successful gradebook throughout the semester. And the reason why we do this at the very beginning, and we just do this in general, is to ensure that feedback is accurate, right? When we offer students that consistent feedback at different points of the year versus at the very end, then they don't really feel surprised, and they kind of know what their progress looks like and not feel like they were lied to or something. They know that how their progress looks like, and they can take accountability to that. Also, transparency is very important, just so that they know where they're at, and if they do need to do any kind of remediation throughout to improve their grade. And then finally, just a positive environment. When they have an accurate snapshot of their performance, they're more likely to connect with the instructor and put more effort to it, and if they need more help, find those resources. So the first thing that we're going to do in regard to those 7 steps is determining the grading method. And this really is not something that you have to do in Canvas. This is more so determining it in the syllabus and just staying consistent with it throughout your assignments as you assign the point system, whether you're going to use a point system or a weighted. It's very imperative that you have that figured out at the beginning, and you have that mirrored in your syllabus, and you do carry throughout the year with that same system. When you shift around points and weighted system, it messes up the calculation of the gradebook, and you see a lot of discrepancies as well as issues. So having this figured out really does help a lot. And of course, making sure it's mirrored in the syllabus so students are in the loop of what that looks like. The next thing we're going to do is choosing a grading scheme. And to do that, you kind of really let the students know what an A means, what a B means, if your course is maybe even satisfactory or unsatisfactory. So we're going to look at all that stuff. Can y'all see my Canvas course?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thanks. So when you go to your Canvas course, in the demo, how that looks like, how do we determine our grading scheme? So if you go to your course navigation bar at the very left side, so this is called the course navigation bar, and this is called the global navigation bar. It's called global just because it's attached to your Canvas account. So every course you have, this will be glued to it. This is more pertaining to this specific course that I have opened. You're going to go to the very bottom to settings, and ensure that first tab is selected, and then we're going to scroll all the way down kind of towards the middle where it says grading scheme. From here, we're going to go ahead and view and edit and see which I did put had a typo. Exam. What time today? So this is kind of going to show you the existing grading scheme that we have. If you like it, if you don't like it, you can edit it and just kind of change it however you want. So this says from 100 to 94, definitely something that probably not everybody does. You can change from percentage to points if that's what you are following, point system method, and just make sure you are clicking save to save that. However, if this is not what you're looking for, then you can go and hover or click on the option below where it says manage all grading schemes. And from there, you can select grading schemes that the university had already defined for you. So you have options like say the satisfactory and unsatisfactory. So some grad courses use that. Then you have like other ones that you can use. Note that the ones that the A&M had already set for us, you can't really edit those. But what you can do if you're like, I like some of that, but I don't like all of it, and I want to make it more cater to the course, then you are welcome to create your own grading scheme even and have that ready for your students. So you have kind of a broad overview of all the potential letters and what they would stand for, and just delete the ones that don't. Let me just delete these that you don't really need, and making sure I'm deleting the right ones. I think I did not do a good job of that, but once you kind of filter through what you really want, make sure you name it, because if you do not name it, then you will not be able to find it and then select it later on, because this is just the creation of your grading scheme. Later on, you have to select it and set that as a default for your course. So I'm going to call this example 2, just because we have already an example, and I'm going to hit save. So now I'm adding that to my collection of all grading schemes. In order to create the right one, you will go to this drop-down menu and make sure you're clicking on the one that we just created that you want for this course. So in my case would be launch example 2, and then you update course details at the very bottom so that you make sure that all those edits have been saved. That way your grading scheme is set. The students now know what the A stands for, the B stands for, so on and so forth. Just make sure that whatever you choose, whatever is on that grading scheme, is in the syllabus. They have to match each other. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of students complaining, and we don't want that. All right, so that's the second step of the 7 steps of creating a successful gradebook. We are going to move on to the third step. Actually, I'm going to view the third and the fourth just because they go hand in hand. The third step is creating the assignment groups. Those assignments are the ones that you are grading your students on, the ones that are in the syllabus, like you're grading them on quizzes, tests, discussion posts, whatever it is that you are grading them. You want to make sure you have them set in the assignments tab so that the calculations are happening correctly, because this is where all the calculations initiate from to be reflected in the gradebook. So we're going to do that, make sure we have that set correctly. And then our step number 4 will be where we're just going to set up the group weights for each of those assignment groups that we're about to create to make sure that we have that mirrored correctly in the gradebook to total up to 100%, unless you have extra credit. So we're going to jump back to our course, and we're going to go to assignments, also on that course navigation tab on the left. So right here is where you would create your group assignments. So I already have my assignments category, if you will. And I know assignments can be a little bit, I guess, misleading. It's more encompassing assessments, because assignments is a category on its own. But this, you can think of it as this is your assessment groupings. So another thing we typically grade students on are tests. We also grade students on quizzes. This is just an example. And we also grade students on discussions. So we created these groupings right here, and this actually like that. So we have these groupings right here based on, again, your syllabus, what you have set for your students. And these are kind of your categories where you're going to insert your assignments based on each of these categories. Right now, those categories don't really carry a lot of weight. So whatever you put in there, it won't really affect the gradebook. It will when you start creating group weights. So that's going to be the next thing we're going to do, is creating a weight. How much will whatever assignments that are in here weigh in the gradebook? How much will the tests be weighted in my gradebook, and so on and so forth for the other options. So to do that, we're going to go to the 3 dots on the right side, and then we're going to click on assignment group weights, that option right there, where it will view, and I do see the typo still. It's all right. We will see the assignment groups that we created, and then get to determine how much will that be of the student's total grade. So for example, assignments are going to be 20% of the student's total grade, tests will be 30, quizzes will be 20, and discussions will be 30. Typically that's not the case, but just for this example, that's what we're going to do. So we want to make sure the totals up to 100, unless you have a bonus section and you're aware of that. Otherwise, if it totals to more, and you'll be surprised that your grades don't add up to 100, that's probably why. This is where you would come and check to make sure your assignment groups are totaling to what you need it to total to. So with that being said, this basically means that your assignments that are here, how many ever there are, whether they're 10 or 1, they're all going to be weighing 20% of the student's final grade. Same thing with the tests, right? If there's 1 test or 500, whatever is in here will be kind of equally, they all will have an equal percentage, but they, at the end of the day, they will all equate to 30% of the student's total grade. So if I were to move this here, for example, we'll drag it here. It's not a test, but just for the sake of this example, these two will equate to 20% of the student's grade, giving this 10% and this 10%. So this is kind of what I did, is just going to that assignment tab or assignment link and create the group assignments first. And then we created assignment group weights, making sure that we have those mirrored to the syllabus so that it calculates correctly in the gradebook. All right, so to just kind of review what we just did, oh, we're going ahead of ourselves here. Okay, so we already did that. The next few steps, or I guess the fifth step, will also be in the assignments tab, or same area we were in. And this one will just be setting up group rules. This is where you get to, if you want to drop a lowest grade, you can do that. Or if you want to make sure that there's one grade that's not dropped, this is where you would do it. So let's say I want to do this, and I'm going to drag this back here. I want to do that kind of rule for the assignments. I have a lot of assignments that I just do daily checks, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting the most important ones, and I don't need all of them. So the way to do that, you will go to the 3 dots on the very right side and hit the edit button. And from there, obviously you still have that group name where you have the option to change it. You also have the option to do the total grade just in case you didn't do it. But here is where the rules come to play. If you want to drop a lowest grade, you can do that just because you have a lot of assignments and it wouldn't matter. You can drop a highest score. Not sure why you would do that, just because that typically helps the student, but that is an option if you would like to do so. And obviously you can just keep going up or down based on the number of assignments, and same thing with the lowest score. You can also choose to never drop a certain assignment. So yes, we are dropping the lowest, but if the lowest happened to be this assignment, yeah, we want that because this happens to be a very important assignment that I do want reflected in the gradebook. You can do that. You can add how many ever assignments you would like reflected on here and just click save. When you do that, at the very top, you'll see those changes reflected where you can see the 3 rules, and it'll tell you what those rules are, where you're dropping the lowest grade, and these 2 are the ones that I want to never drop. So in this student's case, only 1 assignment really, technically, one assignment can be dropped. All right, so this is kind of all things to step 5. We have 2 more steps, and those 2 more steps are going to be done in a different area, and that's going to be in the gradebook directly. And that's step number 6 and 7. Step number 6, we will look at how to set up late policies. We all know students will sometimes submit their assignments late. Do we want that to count towards the gradebook? Because that all contributes to that final calculation. So this is where we get to make that decision, so we don't run into any issues. And then the next step will be setting up grade posting policies, whether we want the assignments to be posted manually or automatically. So we'll look into all those 2 steps. Going back to our course, so we're going to hop from assignments to the grades at the very top here. And once you're in the gradebook, you are going to go to the top right where you see that gear, the settings gear. You're going to click on that. And then right there, you can see the late policies is the very first option for you. You can automatically apply grade for missing submissions, or you can uncheck that. If you would like that and you want to determine a percentage for that missing submission, you can determine it here. You can also apply deductions. So if you want to apply deductions by day or hour of when that assignment was turned in late, you can do that here. So I want 5% for every hour that it is late. You can also adjust the lowest possible grade that you would like the students to get. So if the student never turns in the assignment, will this be detrimental to their major or to their final grade? And will that matter for your course? If you're like, oh no, I want them to at least get a 20, even though, you know, they were 5 days late, you can determine that here. And just at the very end, make sure you apply those settings so that all of that good stuff is saved.
Reem, we do have a question in the chat. Someone has their hand up.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, my name is Rosa. So I have a question. Is there
Yes.
any way where multiple deductions can be applied, or is it just the one deduction? For example, I have a course where the first initial deduction would be, let's say, 5 points for the first day. And then any day reoccurring after that would be 2 points. Is that even an option, or is it just the one?
I want to say this is the only option that's on here. I'm not aware of another one because this is really the area that this is the only place that you can do late policies.
Right. I didn't think
but-
so. I figured I'd just ask. I didn't know if it was maybe like a rule that could be established outside this policy in terms of late.
Yeah. That's a great question.
That's a good question. We've had that before. This is the only place in Canvas to apply that particular deduction is by, there's not a secondary deduction. There's just the major deduction here.
Okay.
We have worked with some people who really wanted to do it. And there is a way, again, beyond the scope of this session, you can export the gradebook into an Excel sheet and do it that way. But that, you know, becomes time consuming, but this is the only spot in Canvas.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. All right. So back to, and I'm writing the questions down just so that we can explore those once we are done with the session. So I'm trying to remember where I was. Okay, late policies. So after we finish all that, you can apply settings. But in our case, we're going to do the last step of the gradebook setup, which is grade posting policy. And this is going to set up your default for the entire gradebook, entire course, really, if you would like your grades to automatically be set up to post, or if you would like to just manually post your grades. So with this, like the difference, this would be detrimental, I guess, based on how your course looks like. So if your course is writing intensive and you really take your time to grade your students' work, then maybe manually posting grades would be the best default option. If you have a lot of daily checks that, you know, consist of a few questions that are multiple choice, then maybe automatically posting grades would be your best bet for posting the grades throughout the year. And then you just apply settings. Now, this is just the default for the entire course. However, if you chose automatically post grades, so I'm just going to apply settings. So now everything is going to automatically post, but there's one assignment that is writing intensive and that will require you some time to grade. You can override that option for that specific assignment. So I'm just going to go through this assignment. For example, I want to have this manually post versus everything else is already by default automatic. So you go to those, hover around those 3 dots and click on that. And then at the very end of that pop-up box of options, go to grade posting policy and then click on manually post grades and then hit save. So this basically means that while everything else will automatically post, that specific column will manually post, and you can change that as needed. I do see another question.
Yeah, we have another question
From Callius.
This may be a very silly question, but what's the difference between manually posting and automatically posting?
Excellent question. So not at all, actually, that's a great question. That's basically what the grade posting policy is all about. The automatically post grades is if, for example, you have, say, a quiz that has 10 questions and those are, there's already answer choices that are already in there, and it kind of grades on itself. So on its own, you can just have it post without having to worry about going back and checking in. If there is possibly maybe within that assignment, a question that you do need to look at, for example, an essay-based question, then maybe it's best to not have it automatically post and have it manually post so that you look back, give feedback as needed, and then have it post. So the automatically one is really for when you have shorter assignments that don't really need much feedback, if you will. That's typically, I'd say, quizzes and assignments that are already being graded automatically. And the manual ones are more those ones that are maybe paper-based, essay-based. I can't think of any other examples, but CJ, if you have any other things to add to that.
No, that's pretty, I mean, anything that, I mean, it's some of it's personal preference on the part of the instructor. The other part is, you know, automatically, like if I do a lot of daily learning checks, I would want the students to learn from that really quickly and have quick turnaround. I don't need to grade them all, but like Reem said, if it's a writing intensive class, then maybe I need to review every piece of student work, and I don't want to grade 2 of them today and have those grades released and grade 5 of them tomorrow and have those be released. I want to grade them all and then release them all at one time.
Okay, so this could be very similar to when we were using eCampus to hide and unhide a column.
It's exactly the same. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. I don't know if we have time for another question, CJ. I see Rosa has her hand up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask again, can you show me again, how do you select the column to individually set that one?
Absolutely. So whatever assignment that is, just kind of hover. I know it's a little weird. You don't really see those 3 dots on the right side. You just have to hover for them to appear.
Okay, it's the 3 dots. Got it.
Correct.
And then posting policy at the bottom.
End.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
Correct. You're welcome.
And can we do this ahead of time? For example, if you have your grade book ready and set, and you know that a particular set of assignments you would want to not have them automatically, I can do that before any grades are in there, correct?
For sure. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. It's just a setting. Absolutely. 100%. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, my typical use, I normally have it done automatically so that I can get them feedback as quick as it appears, because I have some TAs doing grading. I don't want to have to manage all of those. They'll just release as they do. But then when we get to final exams, I don't want anybody seeing anything until we have all the final exams done, in case we have to do any curving or anything like that. So I have all of those on manual so that we could do the background work, and then we go and release them when we got them set.
That's amazing. Also another great way to do this as well. Thank you for that. So we're just going to review the 7 steps. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but what we just did was determining the grading method at the very beginning, which really required you to just make sure you have it set in the syllabus and you know what you're doing for the semester. The next step was choosing that grading scheme of what A means, what B means, C, so on and so forth. Number 3 was creating assignment groups. Number 4 was setting the weights for these assignment groups. Number 5 was making sure those group rules are there as far as dropping a assignment or basically that. And then 6 and 7 were setting like policies for the grades based on submissions and how that looks like, if it's going to be automatically posted or manually posted. So we're going to move and hop over to our next section of this training that involves all things module creation. Why do we utilize modules, creating modules, adding content to modules, and organizing the modules? The reason why we do this is also going back to Randy's great course. You can see that when the modules are done correctly, the students are able to easily navigate through it. It really gets overwhelming if it's not that way, especially if we go mid-year and there's so many assignments and materials. That tends to be a big thing. Ease of organization and that sequential path, just knowing that consistent patterns and how things look like, they can, by routine, figure it out just by looking at it. So the first thing we're going to look at, and I will demo that, will be creating modules. We will create sequential modules based on chapters, weeks. We will avoid modules grouped by readings, assignments, and quizzes, because then they have to figure out, well, is this for this week or next week or what week? It's going to be so difficult for them. And just having an understanding that whenever you create a module, it always appears at the end and you have to move it up. So we'll do that, and then we'll also do, while we're here, we're going to be adding content to those modules. I'll show you how to add new content or an existing content in the course. So going back to our handy dandy course here, we're going to go to the assignments tab. I'm sorry, the modules tab. So right here is where your students will see all the information, everything, all the assignments, the quizzes, the tests, even though you do see them on links on its own. This is kind of where you create things, the behind the scenes, if you will, where you create everything, and it's just I guess a place where everything is just all over the place, kind of, if you will. It's just the creation place. But modules is the more refined, organized area where it's organized either by week or unit, so students can easily allocate those materials. So to create modules, and this is just example modules we have here, according to your templates, some of you might have that instructor module at the very beginning where you get to introduce yourself and have some of that personable information in there, as well as some policies, expectations you have, and some other template information. You will also have a student resource module where it has essentially the buttons that are on the homepage, the syllabus, office hours, mental health button, and so on and so forth. This is how the module looks like. We're going to create one right now. So to do that, you're going to go to that plus sign on the very right side that says plus module. Give it a name, so whatever my module will look like. So I'm going to call mine week 1. I don't think I have that yet. You can lock it until a certain date. So just like Randy said, he doesn't want the students to see all the modules because that makes it so overwhelming for them. He wants us to make it to where it appears based on when they need to see those information. You can create prerequisites, add those. So if you want students to not access week 1 until they have gone through the introduction, then you can do that too. You can set as many prerequisites as you need, and you can click on that add module. And like I had mentioned, the module that you create goes towards the end. So don't freak out if you don't see it just because it's at the end. Cool thing is that you can go to that 3 dots on the right side and move the module. You can drag it, but that tends to be a little tough. This is an easier way, and you can say either you want to move it at the top or before a certain module, and you get to choose that. So it's really neat how that works. For my case, I'm just going to move it to the top. There you go. From here, we're going to create some materials. We're going to add materials really to this. To do that, you'll go to that plus sign on the right side of this module. And then you get to choose whatever that content looks like. Do you want to add an assignment, a quiz, a file, a page, a discussion? In my case, I think I only have assignments in this course, so I'm just going to do assignment. You can either create an assignment or add the pre-existing ones. I'm going to do both. So let me do create an assignment real quick. This is where you create it right there within the module instead of creating it within the assignments tab. You can do that too. So I'm going to call this example assignment. And then if you want, you can also explore formatting things. So that's something that Randy's course also had. He did some indents there, so you can indent. For example, I'm going to indent to level 2. So you can't really see how you can see how the indents worked. This would be more visible if you have more materials, how it looks like, but that's right there. I can create an assignment, and obviously if you want to edit this assignment, you should click on it, edit, and do all that individually. To add a pre-existing assignment, you will do the same thing, filter through assignments, and click whatever assignment you would like to add. So this one, for example, and there you go. So you have it there. Note that this one is green just because it's published. This was it's not published. If you want to publish it, you just click on this and it's published after that. So we just went through creating a module and organizing the assignments. Another way, let me go back to my slideshow. I'm gonna make sure I'm not ahead of myself. Yeah, so this is the next thing we're gonna do. So now that we learned how to add new content and existing content, we are gonna look at how to organize them to make them more visually appealing, very easy to find via headings, indentation, and numbering. So back to that course, a good example would be, and I really did like the example we saw, was how Randy had them by week. So you can do like week 1, example assignment, and then the indentation is still there. And then here, just kind of adding those numbers to it. And I'm actually going to change the indentation just because I do want you to see how that looks like. So let me change it back and then add another one with the level 2 so you see how it looks like. So maybe week 1 example assignment, I have some more details to add to that. So I am going to do a text header and say instructions. And then I'll do it in that level 2. Let me add that here. Let's see if level 3 maybe looks better. Yeah. So either or, and you can still number that. Just having those headers just above those materials allows that better flow and just better understanding of what is it that's in the course or in the module. And my indentation was a little off, so you probably have a better understanding of how to better do it and organize it to meet your students' expectations. All right, so we looked at all that stuff, moving modules and moving content. So yeah, moving content was the next thing. So you can either drag or drop, or you can do the same thing we did with moving the modules. So just go to those 3 dots, click on the move to option, and you can choose which module you'd like it to be moved to and where exactly would you like it to be, whether it's at the top, the very beginning of that module, or maybe before a certain assignment or after it. And make sure you click that move button so those changes are applied. Any questions so far on all that? Sorry for that. All right, so we just looked at creating a module, adding content, and how to organize it to better meet students' needs and expectations. So the next thing we're going to look at for today's training is evaluating student work, how to use the speed grader and ways and to attach a rubric and use that also for grading, which makes it super easy to grade. The reason why we use the speed grader is to allow us just more time. It's more time efficient. It's very fast in the way we view students and we go through them, allows us to annotate and comment, and just for consistency throughout the board, which we'll look at in a second. So we'll look at how that looks like, where to find it. We will also look at attaching a rubric into an assignment and how to use that to grade as well. And yep, so we'll go ahead and go to our course. So to access the speed grader, there's multiple ways to do it, but I'm going to show you one way, and that is through the gradebook. Kind of makes it easier for you to memorize that the speed grader is from the gradebook. Whenever this loads. So if you go to this assignment, you hover above to that 3 dots and you click on speed grader, the second option there, you will have access to the speed grader. Whenever it loads, I want to make sure yeah, it's the right assignment. Okay. So right here, it's taking a while to load, but this is an example assignment that my coworkers submitted. So these are not real students. And you can see the assignment kind of on the left where you can view it. And then here's where you get to really do all the grading magic. So in this case, you can view a rubric, because I do have a rubric attached to this assignment. Let me expand this so you see that. So you can choose based on their performance. And this one tends to be, let's save. This is the rubric example where it does not calculate towards the grade for student. You have an option when you create a rubric, and we'll look at that in a second, where you can make it calculate immediately the grade upon you choosing the categories, but this one was just more for feedback. So to hide that, and look at that. Oh. Cancel. So another way to give feedback for this assignment is through annotations, which is a really awesome tool here. At the very top of this assignment, you have an option to add comments. So I'm just going to comment. You can highlight certain things. If this is a writing intensive course and there's like a grammatic issue here, you can do that and just also give it a comment and specify what it is. Please check, for example. Although this looks perfect, but just an example here. You can add a text, you can strike through things, and this is pertaining a lot to editing. You can change the color of the highlighting. There's a lot of great options and tools you can use to give that automatic feedback for your students throughout the annotation feature. Another really awesome thing at the very bottom here is where you can add feedback. You can either write a comment, just good old typing. You can annotate that comment by clicking on that this little headphone option, and you can click on it and say, great job on your assignment. Keep up the good work. Okay, it only got the keep up the good work, so that's great. So you can obviously, once it puts it in, you can edit it just in case there's like a typo that the AI or the system had created for you if you want to add punctuations, whatever. You can also record a video of feedback if you would like to, and you can attach files. So it's really nice that you have a diverse approach of how you can offer that feedback, for your students. And make sure you hit submit. And of course, if this rubric is not contributing to the grade, of course, make sure you do add that grade for the student and click submit. So the cool thing about SpeedGrader, if you look above here, you see that your students are all listed, and you can just, through those arrows, maneuver between them, go back and forth, and that's why the SpeedGrader is what it is, the SpeedGrader, because it's that easy. We will then next go to, after we looked at the SpeedGrader, we're going to look at rubrics and how to add those to assignments. So you can add a rubric to an assignment, a discussion, into any type of assessment that requires feedback. So we're going to look at how to do that. So let me create an assignment real quick. And I did go through that real quick. I apologize. Let me do it again. So to do that, you'll go to the top right button. Once you're in the assignments, I think we went too far. All right. You click on that button, the add assignment button. And this is just because I want to create a new example for us. And I'm just going to call it example assignment. Oh. Okay, we're just going to leave it like that. Or probably not. Looks really wonky. Okay. And then we will, I'm just going to hit save for this one. I don't think there's anything I need to do. Okay, text entry. Typically you add all the information, you make those edits, but for this sake, we're just going to do that. Once you create the assignment and add all the details, you have the option at the very bottom to add a rubric, should you want to. There's two ways for you to do it. There's one way to do it on spot and just create it right then and there, or you can, maybe you have it already created within that rubrics hub where you create all those materials of specifically the rubrics in this case. In that way, if you have a rubric, you can find a rubric and just kind of select which one you want to use, or you can just create it right then and there, editing the criteria, the ratings, the points. If you want to add a criteria, it'll tell you, do you want a new one, or do you want to just duplicate the one that you already have and edit from there? And so on and so forth. The really imperative options, so there are details here that you can, or some settings you can click through. But if you did want your rubric to automatically count grades toward that grade, kind of like how we did right now, but it did not calculate grades. If you want it to do the calculation as well, make sure you click on this option. Use this rubric for assignment grading. and then click on create rubric. This will ensure that whenever you do go through the speed grader and click the categories, it'll automatically calculate the points for you, which is really neat. Any questions on this?
We do have a question in the chat, Reem.
This is Rose again. Quick question about the rubric. Is there
Yes.
so one of my course directors wanted to know if the students are able to see the rubric, or if there's basically, is there an option for when they do want the students to see the rubric versus only the grader to see the rubric and not the student?
I want to say the students can see it at all times. So are you saying
Oh, okay. Yes.
after?
My question is, can the students, if I use a rubric,
Mhm.
do the students see the rubric all the time?
Correct. That's my understanding.
Yes,
that-
the students will see the rubric at all times.
Yeah.
Canvas has designed it that way so the students are aware of what the grading criteria are.
Oh, okay. And there's not an option to have it where it could be hidden then
Yeah,
from
no,
the
not
student?
that I'm aware of.
No? Okay.
I
That's
think,
what I
yeah.
wanted to clarify, because at one point we were going to use a rubric for a course, but the course directors didn't want the students to see the details of the breakdown. They would eventually get an overall grade, summation of, you know, this section is this portion, this section is this portion, you know, like in bigger chunks, but they didn't want them to see the specifics of
Yeah,
individual breakdown.
There are some workarounds you could use depending on how big the class is. If it's a large class, this option wouldn't work, but you could have a rubric on some other form, whether it be paper or Google Sheets or Excel or whatever, and then you could upload it into the comments. That would be one way. I've seen that done in smaller classes for a situation you're talking about.
Okay.
You could have the students submit but not attach a rubric, and then check the button that says "Don't count this toward the final." Create another assignment, but not publish it. And then enter all the grades for the students with a rubric, and then release it all at once through the manual. So there are some workarounds, but straight up the option you talked about, no, but there are workarounds.
Okay. Yeah, we've opted with just having our internal rubric for the graders to use, and then we post a much more broad breakdown of where their grade comes from as the rubric that is attached to the assignment.
Okay. Good question.
Wonderful. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, adding all this great information to my list. All right, so moving on to the next category, which I know it's a lot of information. So if you have any questions, we can pause now for like any questions in regards to what we addressed before we move to our last category, because this is our final one. So any questions in regard to speed grader, rubrics, or any of the things we addressed earlier? All right. That is awesome, but if you do have questions, feel free to ask those. Okay, so we will do the final thing that the final step for this training or section, which is involving, after we have created modules and we did the grade book, we did all the great things in terms of content creation, we want to now know how that looks like on the student's end. This is really important because sometimes we see things differently as instructors. We have the power, right? We see a lot of buttons and clicks and things, and students don't really see all that. So if you want to know how students' experience look like from the other end, if they're going to struggle or not, well, this is going to be your best friend. And I do encourage all of you today to explore that with me. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at how that looks like. But the reason why we do it, as I had mentioned, is just getting that user experience, putting ourselves in students' shoes, seeing how it looks like, specifically for assessment submissions, how the submission looks like, what feedback will it give. So for example, the automatic and manual setting that we did play around with today, if you want to test that out, this could be a cool option for you to do so. And then finally, communication review, how that looks like from a student's point of view. So we will access that together and look how that looks like and just really see how that unfolds. So we're gonna jump back to my course and go to the homepage. You can access the student view from multiple places from your course. I want to say modules is one of them. Home is another. The ones that students typically have access to, right? Grades, I would think, probably not. Actually, I'll take that back. But we'll go back to the home and the modules, and I will say modules might be the most important thing to see all the things we add, how that looks like. So I'm gonna click on student view on the top right corner. So that purple kind of frame will basically is telling you that you're in student mode. And that's why a lot of those buttons on the left side disappear. So don't freak out. This is kind of how it's supposed to be. And actually, looking at this now, I see that there's something that's not supposed to be published, that it is published. So we'll fix that in a second. But typically your students would see the homepage, modules, grades, just a cleaner look for modules, for your course. All the other things are more for you. That's all the behind the scene creation things, but this is the main things. You can look through modules, scroll through those. You can click on certain assignments and see how that looks like. You can even start an assignment and see and go through it as a student and figure out if you feel like it's if it was easily done, or if you think it was a little hard and you need to relook at that and edit some things. You can submit even as a student, so all that good stuff. See the rubric here, you can see the rubric. If you do any assignments, but you don't want that to stay saved in the course, you can just reset student, that button at the very bottom. So I'm just gonna click that right now. You can see how it's gonna take me back to the modules, to the very beginning. So everything I did and messed around as a student will all be cleaned. It all is history because I just reset all my progress that I just did as a student. To leave the student view, you just leave it all together with that right button, pretty straightforward, and it takes you back to your instructor view. Now, something that I just mentioned is that files section that's not supposed to be published just because that's more for you. You know, we have drafts and such, so that's kind of where some of those things are kept. And so to hide those things, which is a good point to look at that, go to the very bottom of the navigation tab to settings, which we visited today. But today, for this particular task, you are going to go to the third tab called navigation, just because that's all things navigation. And then files is not supposed to be shared because that's more for me, for the instructor. So I'm going to hover around those three dots, click on that, and click disable. If there's anything else that you want to disable and enable, it's basically the same thing. So if there is something in here that you would like to enable and add that, just click grade scope, for example, click on the three dots and enable it, and then make sure you go all the way down and hit save. This will allow students to then see it. So let's do the home page student view so we can see if that got updated. There you go. So this is kind of how you can add or remove things, but good practice is not to add your assignments or your pages or your quizzes, a little link, because that is where everything is there laid out in no structure whatsoever. It's really the modules where you can pull in all that good stuff and have that laid out for your students so they have a user-friendly experience. So I'm gonna leave student view now. Any questions thus far about student view? All right, we're gonna move on. We already left student view, we're ahead of the game. So what we looked at in terms of student view was how to access it, how to think like a student and make sure it actually is friendly. If it's not, then we might need to troubleshoot. And then finally, how to leave the student view and reset. So this is just an extra task, but I will leave it up for questions. Maybe before we do the questions, I do want to go over these just in case. I want to make sure I don't forget this. So in the event you need support from anything in regards to Canvas, there's kind of two ways to go about it. So there's the technical and pedagogical kind of sides, which could be a little difficult to maybe distinct. But if you know it's technical and it's more like something is not working, something is glitching, then you will need to contact support@instructor.com. And I know the font is small. Oh, it's right there. So go to that, and then once you're there, in the header of that email, make sure you mention the exact wording that I'm about to say. Please escalate directly to Canvas Tier 2 support at TAMU. Y'all know that Instructure tends to support many institutions, and we want to make sure that your question is directed to A&M personnel so that they can assist you with your question catered to your A&M needs. And that's why we do that specific step. If it's more pedagogy, then you contact us directly, and that is through the cte@tamu.edu email. And we will set up a consultation with you, a one-on-one through Zoom or in person. However, we'll make sure to accommodate that and address your questions. So that's kind of line of support, and you do have access to this through the slideshow in the resource document. I do want to touch on some great upcoming events that I encourage you to attend. If you need more support in regards to Canvas or scholarship of teaching and learning, course design, and many other great offerings such as generative AI, which is very relevant these days, and rubrics. So something to definitely look at, and we're going to share, Suja's going to share the ERS link to find these great offerings and register from there via your account. All right, and we'll also share a Qualtrics survey, if you don't mind just having that, to just let us know how we did today, and if there's anything else we can help to support you. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of stop the share and just open it up for questions. And
we do have a question in the chat about talking about how pages in Canvas are used.
Great question. So let me reshare my screen real quick. Great question. So, like I said earlier, the assignments, your discussions, pages, quizzes, this is the area, like imagine like the kitchen. This is where you cook all the stuff, right? But at the very end of the day, you're going to serve it on the dining room, with the dining table, where it all looks great and great presentation. So this is where all the cooking, we don't want to go to the kitchen. It's very messy, but pages specifically, again, we don't share this with students. This is where you create pages. And once you click on it, it'll default to the home page just because it is the main page of the course, the king of all pages. But to view all the other pages in the course, click on the View All Pages button on the left side, and you can see the pages that are already created here, which I don't think there are much. Well, there are a lot of pages. Great. So this is where you create pages like if you want to add instructions to assignments, for example, the office hours one. This is an actual page that was created through this page area, and it was using the A&M template, which you should already have, and just adding all that information. This is where it was created, but guess what? We added it to the modules because we don't want students to have access to all the pages that we just saw. We want them to see it in a more refined manner. And so let me show you where that is. Here we go. If you click on it from the modules, you'll find that it pops up. But that actually originated from that pages link. Okay, so this is where all the pages were created. Another example I can show you, or I can show you how to create one too real quick, if we don't have any other questions.
I'll just add, to me, pages, what I always say, they're one-way communication. So discussions, assignments, quizzes, you're putting something out there, the students are interacting with them. Pages mostly are a one-way communication. There's a way to make them a two-way communication, but it's me as an instructor passing on information to the students. So that could be content I want them to read. It could be hyperlinks I want them to investigate. It could be videos I want them to watch, but they're not submitting anything directly back to me. It could also be instructions for the course, overview, things like that. But in general, pages are one-way communication, whereas everything else we do with the students in Canvas is a two-way communication.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you, CJ, for that. So to create a page, really simple, just go to that plus sign, create page button. And the really nice thing about Canvas, it's very consistent. You notice that every time we create something, it's usually a plus sign on the very right side. So that way you don't have to figure it out every time. So we're going to create a page. It's taking a while. Adding a title, very straightforward. Your content here, whatever it is that you want to communicate to your students. You can also add links if you would like, whether it's an external or course link. You can add images, again, whether it's course or external. You can add files, and you can even, you can retrieve things from Google Drive. So if you have something that's in Google Drive or even in Microsoft, you can also get information from there, LinkedIn Learning, YouTube directly. You can add from all these resources pretty much. And then, yeah, at the very end, just click save and that page will be created for you. And if you ever want to add it to the modules, we'll go back to modules. And you'll add it the same way we kind of added content, which is clicking that plus sign, going through. This time we're going to do page, and just clicking through whatever page you just created. I hope that helps answer your question. I feel like we do have another question. You're very welcome, Dana.
Yeah, no other questions in the chat as of now, Reem.
All right, well,
That page in the modules that actually puts it in the pages listing too, right?
yes, that is
Yes.
correct. Yes.
Okay. A thing I wanted to flag on when you were working on the student view and you wanted to pull a particular item out of the view on that left side and went down into settings. Remember, in settings, you always got to go down to the bottom and save or update, which is different than the feel for everywhere we are. That's usually where where we miss things is we'll change things there and we feel like it updates like it does in the rest of Canvas. But in the settings area, you got to go down and do save and update on that.
Absolutely. Excellent point. Always save and update. Otherwise, all your hard work is not gonna stay there. We don't want that to happen. We don't want to waste your time. All right, well, if there are no questions, this is it for us, unless CJ wants to add something, or Randy. If you have any other questions that might pop up later on, make sure you do follow that path that I showed earlier and email us those questions. Thank you for your time.